Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. We're going to be getting started with the talk in just a short while, but before we get started today, I do have some housekeeping announcements and upcoming sessions I'd love to tell you about. This Thursday on December 12th, we'll be hosting a webinar for accredited architects and interior designers, and that presentation will be on designing for safety, protecting worker health from the hazards of engineered stone, in partnership with New York, New Jersey Education Research Center and the Southern California NIOSH Education and Research Center. And on Wednesday, December 18th, we'll be joined by Dr. Ram Makia and the Northwestern Center for Occupational Health and Safety for a presentation on the utility of artificial intelligence for risk reduction of musculoskeletal disorders. And we'll be taking a break during the month of January on our webinar series, but we look forward to welcoming you back for more Education and Research Center webinars starting in February. We also invite you to save the date for our annual symposium, COEH Built Bridges, on Thursday, February 6th to Friday, February 7th. This year, we'll be exploring aftershocks and outbreaks, emergency response strategies for occupational and environmental health. I'll put links to both of those events in the chat. And then for more, you can visit us online at coeh@berkeley.edu/webinars. And on behalf of education and research centers throughout the country, we're pleased to present the Industrial Hygiene webinar series. This is a collaborative effort on behalf of each ERC's continuing education program and aspires to provide access to current research supported through NIOSH ERC programs. It wouldn't be possible without all of you joining us here to show your interest in these, so thank you for joining us. In today's webinar, General Population Performance and Passing a Fit Test for N95 Respirators is presented by PhD candidate Majid Bagheri Hosseinabadi in partnership with the Midwest Center for Occupational Health and Safety. You are going to be muted during the presentation, so if you'd like to ask a question, please enter it into the online Q&A. And we'll save time at the end of the presentation to address as many questions as possible. We'll also have the chat open, so please feel free to use it to participate in the conversation that way, and then direct any questions you'd like addressed into the Q&A instead of the chat. This presentation is being recorded and will be made available on the Center for Occupational and Environmental Health YouTube page within 5 business days. And all participants who log in with their registration email for the full live session today will receive an email tomorrow with a link to the evaluation form that will qualify you for a certificate of completion with 1 continuing education contact hour. This is sent automatically via Zoom 24 hours after the webinar session, so be sure to check your email. And once the evaluation is completed, you'll be able to access and print your certificate. And without further ado, it is my absolute pleasure to welcome our presenter for today, PhD candidate Majid Bagheri Hosseinabadi. He is a dedicated researcher and industrial hygienist with over 8 years of experience in occupational health. He's currently pursuing a PhD in occupational hygiene at the University of Minnesota, where he also works as a research assistant. His research focuses on occupational exposures to airborne viruses and bacteria in agricultural settings, with a strong emphasis on mitigating the health risks faced by workers. He earned a master's degree in occupational health from the University of Kerman in Iran, and he has taught courses such as noise engineering and radiation hygiene and supervised undergraduate theses at the University of Sharud, Iran. As a researcher, Majid has successfully secured funding for research projects, including a clinical trial on the effects of intervention with vitamins E and C on the adverse health effects induced by electromagnetic field exposure among power plant workers. Recognizing his academic achievements and research potential, he has been awarded several prestigious scholarships, including the AIHA Local Section Scholarship and the Northwest Chapter of the ASSP Scholarship. With a deep passion for his field, he is poised to continue making significant contributions to occupational health through his research, teaching, and advocacy. And it is our absolute pleasure to have him join us today for this presentation. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much, Michelle, for the introduction. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today and giving me this opportunity to share the results of one of our research projects on this very interesting topic. As Michelle said, my name is Majid Bagheri Hosseinabadi, and I'm a third-year PhD student in occupational hygiene at the University of Minnesota. Recently, I passed the certified industrial hygiene exam, so I'm a CIH now. The reason that I became interested in this topic is that most research, or I can even say all research on respiratory feed testing, is among workers and working population, especially healthcare workers during and after the COVID-19 pandemic. We have tons of papers discussing influential factors in feed testing among workers. While I can say there is a lack of knowledge and evidence of the performance of the general population in feed testing. However, all of us are aware of the importance of wearing respirators by the general population in threats such as pandemics, industrial accidents, and extreme weather events. To address this gap, we decided to conduct this interdisciplinary research between the School of Public Health and College of Design here at the University of Minnesota. This research focused on the general population attending the Minnesota State Fair in 2021 and 2022. Today, I'm excited to share the results of our study. Here are the objectives that I'll try to cover for today. Before diving into the results of our research, I'd like to start by discussing the rationale behind the importance of wearing respirators by the general population and answering the question, why is it important that the general population have access to well-fitted respirators from the public health point of view? Next, I will explore the best available practice for conducting respirator feed testing. And the last part of my presentation will be about the results of our research on N95 respirator feed testing conducted among the general population. In this section, I'll highlight the role of gender, age, and race in passing respirator feed tests. Before going further, I want to ensure we are all on the same page. Let's take a moment to clarify the differences between respirators and masks. While the terms respirator and mask are often used interchangeably, they refer to completely different personal protective equipment designed for different level of protection. What they have in common in their purpose, providing respiratory protection. Masks, often referred to as surgical masks, provide a barrier to prevent the wearers from inhaling large particles and droplets, but are not effective against fine and small airborne particles. They just offer basic protection and are generally not designed for filtration of airborne particles. Leakage can occur around the edge of the mask when the user inhales, which is why they are considered loose-fitting respirators. Importantly, they do not require a feed test. On the other side, respirators are designed to protect the wearer from inhaling airborne contaminants, including small particles, gases, and vapors. We have various respirators from N95 respirator, which are known as filtering phase piece respirator, to self-contained bracing approaches, which is used in very specific situations. Today, I'll focus on N95 respirator. These respirators are designed to filter out at least 95% of airborne particles, both large and small, offering protection against particles, though neither gases nor vapors. Historically, respiratory protection has been primarily associated with occupational settings, where workers are facing defined inhalation hazards. For example, healthcare workers exposed to tuberculosis, firefighters exposed to smoke, and miners exposed to coal dust and silica. In the United States, OSHA and NIOSH oversee respirator protection. However, their authority is limited to occupational settings. Currently, there is no central authority responsible for the respiratory protection of the public. I've highlighted some common situations where the general population faces exposure to hazardous contaminants and wearing respirators could have a significant impact on public health. Airborne biological agent exposure. This exposure can occur during pandemic, outbreaks, or even seasonal changes. Extreme weather event exposure. As climate change progresses, events like wildfire, hurricanes, and floodings are becoming more frequent, increasing the risk of inhalation hazards. Chemical and radiological exposure caused by accidents. This exposure often results from industrial accidents and emergencies. These scenarios underscore the importance of providing the general population with appropriate respiratory protection. The importance of respiratory protection has become increasingly evident for both occupational and public population, especially since the onset of COVID-19 pandemic. During those challenging days, we learned a tough lesson. We can't solely rely on vaccination and treatment. The reason was clear. We initially had no available vaccine or a specific treatment protocol for COVID-19. This forced us to shift our focus to alternative solutions such as improving ventilation system, practicing social distancing, and wearing respiratory protection. But the question remains, did this measure fully solve the problem? While the development of vaccine and antiviral medication significantly reduced COVID-19 mortality rate, challenges persist. For instance, the emergence of new variation like Omicron has led us to increasing cases and hospitalization. This highlights that even now, respirators remain a vital protection measure for the public. Surprisingly, COVID-19 is not the only scenario where the general population faces the risk of inhalation exposure to airborne communicable biological agents. If we look beyond COVID-19, we find even more concerning situations with diseases like tuberculosis and influenza in terms of airborne transmission. This table illustrates a striking point. I think the only reason that the COVID-19 pandemic has brought attention to the importance of wearing respirators by the public is a higher mortality rate compared with tuberculosis and influenza. Yet the global prevalence of these other diseases, tuberculosis and influenza, is overwhelming. In 2020, there were 1.7 billion tuberculosis infections worldwide, with approximately 7,000 cases in the United States. Influenza numbers are even more concerning in the US, with 35 million cases reported annually. These statistics underscore a critical reality. The general population is highly susceptible to exposure to airborne communicable biological agents. This makes the case for considering respirator protection measures, not just during a pandemic, but in addressing broader public health challenges. In addition to communicable agents, there are other airborne biological agents that, while not being transmitted from a person to person, still pose significant inhalation risk for the general population. One example is mold, which can pose risk to homeowners and recovery workers after events like floods or hurricanes. Although mold spores are not communicable, inhaling them can cause allergic reaction, hay fever symptoms, and even trigger asthma attack. I'll discuss this in more detail later. Seasonal changes also contribute to an increased risk of exposure to mold, pollen, and other allergens. Higher temperature and increased moisture create an ideal environment for mold growth, leading to widespread exposure to spores among the general population. Pollen, one of the smallest triggers for seasonal allergies, also present a significant challenge. Peaks in pollen levels vary by region and time of year. For instance, here in Minnesota, tree pollen peaks for April through June, while grass pollen peaks from May through July. Although there is no cure for allergies, wearing an N95 respirator can significantly reduce contact with allergens, offering relief to those affected. Another example is exposure to bacteria like Legionella, which causes severe respiratory illness in 10,000 to 28,000 people annually in the United States. This bacterium is transmitted via aerosolized water droplets, but is not communicable from person to person. Extreme weather events, especially those associated with climate change, such as wildfire, hurricanes, and flooding, have significantly increased inhalation exposure risk for the general population in certain regions of the United States. Unfortunately, the frequency and intensity of these events are projected to rise in these years. For example, the summer of 2023 marked a record-breaking wildfire season across the western US and Canada, with impact felt throughout the contiguous United States. Climate change has also amplified extreme wildfire conditions in May and June 2023. The likelihood of such events in eastern Canada doubled, resulting in unhealthy smoke levels in many US cities and even reaching Europe across the Atlantic. In 2023, average personal exposure to wildfire smoke in the US was higher than in any year since 2006. Over the past decade, studies indicate that smoke exposure in the US has increased 27-fold. The Western US experiences the highest average number of wildfire smoke days annually, with some areas such as parts of California, Oregon, Arizona, Texas, Louisiana, and Florida seeing 90 to 111 wildfire smoke days each year. Wildfire smoke is a complex mixture of gases, vapors, and fine particles that can irritate the eyes, nose, throat, and lungs, leading to coughing, wheezing, and difficulty breathing. Certain populations are particularly vulnerable to health effects of wildfire smoke, including children, older adults, pregnant women, and individuals with pre-existing conditions such as asthma, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or heart disease. Another category of extreme weather events that contribute to hazardous airborne exposures for the general population includes hurricanes and floods. Extensive water damage caused by these events significantly increase the likelihood of mold contamination in buildings. For example, in 2005, Hurricanes Katrina and Rita caused massive flooding in New Orleans and surrounding parishes. Many structures remained underwater for weeks, becoming saturated with water. These prolonged flooding created ideal conditions for mold to thrive in indoor environment. Similarly, in August 2017, Hurricane Harvey caused flooding and devastation across the Houston metropolitan area. Unlike many other hurricanes, Harvey moved slowly, resulting in extensive and prolonged flooding. These post-flooding conditions facilitated widespread mold growth, posing serious health risk for cleanup workers and residents of affected homes. Another example is Hurricane Helene, which impacted multiple states, including Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, and Tennessee. The aftermath of Hurricane Helene brought severe flooding to the southeastern US, and the excess water in homes further increased the risk of mold contamination. Mold exposure following hurricanes and floods is a significant public health concern. It poses risk not only to unprotected workers and first responders, but also to volunteers and residents involved in cleanup and restoration of water damaged homes. Mold exposure has been linked to a range of adverse health effects, including respiratory illness and other negative health outcomes. To address this risk, CDC recommends personal protective equipment for individuals involved in mold remediation. Among these, N95 respirators are essential for protecting against airborne mold spores during cleanup effort. Acute chemical incidents can occur due to leaks, explosion, and fire, often stemming from damage to chemical plants or accident during the transportation of hazardous materials, such as chlorine gas. Since 1940, there have been several dozen public health disasters where large populations were exposed to chlorine gas. A recent example occurred on February 3rd, 2023, when a Norfolk Southern train of approximately 150 cars derailed near East Palestine, Ohio. 20 of these cars carried hazardous material. The derailment caused a massive fire, prompting emergency responders to take drastic measures to prevent an explosion that could release toxic gases into the surrounding area. Responders initially breached 5 of the cars, releasing the chemical into a trench and burning them off. However, this process emitted harmful gases, including phosgene, a chemical weapon used in World War I, and hydrogen chloride into the atmosphere. This incident underscores how accidents can put the general population at significant risk of inhalation exposure to hazardous airborne contaminants. It's important to note that N95 respirators are designed to protect against particles only. They do not provide protection against gases or vapors. For such exposure, other types of respirators, such as full-face and half-face respirators, prepared with appropriate chemical cartilage, are necessary. And these, like N95 respirator, require proper fit testing to ensure effectiveness. We have learned the critical importance of wearing respirators for the public during natural and man-made disasters. However, the effectiveness of these respirators in protecting against airborne particles can vary from person to person. These variability depend on how well the respirator fits the user face and forms an adequate seal. Any air leakage around the edge of the respirator due to improper fit can significantly compromise its performance, increasing the risk of exposure to airborne particles. In an appealing study, virus counts recovered from skin under an untested N95 respirator were not significantly lower than those from the no respirator control. In contrast, a N95 respirator worn after fit testing provided a substantial reduction in virus counts compared to the no respiratory condition. Therefore, respiratory fit testing is a crucial step in ensuring the effectiveness of a respiratory protection. As people come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, it is unlikely that one type or size of respirator will fit everyone. Fit testing ensures that the selected respirator is suitable for the wearer, providing an effective seal and optimal protection. Overall, it's believed that there are 7 distinct face shapes: oval, round, oblong, square, triangle, diamond, and heart. As you can see, it's difficult to imagine a one-size-fits-all solution. One crucial step in fit testing is determining our face shape. This information helps us select a respirator that will better fit the contour of our face, ensuring a more effective seal and enhanced protection. I found an interesting tool that helps us determine our face shape by answering a series of questions and taking some face measurement. You can access this tool by scanning the QR code below. Of course, I'm going to share my presentation with you, so you don't need to scan it right away. So it's easy to having access to this tool after my presentation. It also provides a quick guide for each question, making it easier to use. N95 respirator can be categorized into four main groups based on their shapes: vertical bifold, molded cup, horizontal trifold, and duckbill. Each design offers a different fit and comfort level, making it important to select the one that suits the user face, shape, and needs. A respirator can't protect you if it doesn't fit properly. That's the key. A fit test ensures that there is a proper seal between the respirator and your face. There are two main types of fit tests, qualitative and quantitative. Let me explain each of them in detail. A qualitative fit test is a pass-fail method, meaning you won't receive a numerical score for the test. Instead, it relies on the wearer's sense, such as taste and smell, to detect any leakage from the respirator. This test involves two main parts. The first step in part one is to prepare the nebulizer. Half a teaspoon of a sensitivity solution is added to the nebulizer. This solution may contain irritants like isoamyl acetate, which is known as banana oil, saccharin, Bitrex, or stannic chloride to create detectable smoke or mist. The wearer is then fitted with a test hood, and they are instructed to breathe through their mouths with their tongue at the front. The test administrator will then squeeze the nebulizer and count the number of squeezes required until the wearer can taste the solution. This gives us the initial dose, or the number of squeezes needed to reach a detectable level. The second part of the qualitative fit test begins with ensuring the respirator is properly fitted to user's face. This involves checking that the user's chin is correctly placed inside the respirator and that the straps have the right tension. Next, a user seal check is performed where the wearer places their hands over the respirator to cover as much of it as possible, then braces out to ensure no air leaks around the edge. After confirming a proper fit, the test hood is put back on the person. The initial dose of solution, which was determined in the first part, is introduced into the hood. The wearer is asked to perform seven exercises for 1 minute each. Every 30 seconds, a top-up dose of the solution is added to ensure that any leakage or failure to maintain a proper seal is detected. The 7 exercises in the second part of the qualitative fit test are breathing normally, breathing deeply, turning head side to side, moving head up and down, talking, which is usually performed by reading the rainbow passage, a standardized passage used for fit testing, bending over, breathing normally again. If the wearer does not taste the solution after completing all these 7 exercises, the test is passed for that respirator. However, if the solution is tasted during the test, you should stop the test and have the wearer clean their mouth, face, and hands, refeed the respirator, and repeat the test, starting from the part one for determining the initial dose. If the solution is still tasted on the second attempt, stop the test again, have the wearer clean their mouth, face, and hands, and try a different respirator. Then perform a new test with the new respirator. The price of these tests is inexpensive. The test costs around $30 to $50, making it more affordable compared to another fit test. The protocol is clear and simple, meaning it can be done without the specialized knowledge or equipment. You can purchase a home kit available from sources like Amazon and 3M to perform the test at home. This option is more convenient for people who prefer not to go to a center. However, it's important to follow all the steps carefully to ensure the results are accurate. But the problem is the results depend on wearer's perception. which can be influenced by factors like personal sensitivity or the possibility of misreporting. The test relies on the wearers being able to smell or taste the solution. However, many people suffer from olfactory dysfunction, affecting up to 20% of the adult population. Moreover, 60% of the 35.8 million US adults diagnosed with COVID-19 in 2021 experienced olfactory dysfunction, with a proportion reporting no recovery in taste or smell. Because of this limitation, the need for a more objective test became evident, leading us to consider the quantitative fit test. The quantitative fit test works on the principle of measuring the concentration of particles inside and outside respirator to assess how well the respirator fits and how much leakage occurs. This is done by using an aerosol condensation nuclei counter, which counts the particles and determines the level of protection provided by the respirator. The test generates a feed factor, which is a numerical value that represents the ratio of particle concentration outside the respirator to particle concentration inside the respirator. For example, if the feed factor is 100, it means that the concentration of particle outside the respirator is 100 times greater than the concentration inside, indicating good feed and minimal leakage. The higher the feed factor, the better the feed and protection the respirator provides. For doing a quantitative feed test, first we need to attach the sampling probe of an aerosol condensation nuclei counter to an N95 respirator using a punch. Then, like the qualitative feed test, we ask the person to wear the respirator correctly. Like I said, the user chin is correctly placed inside the respirator. The straps are adequately tensioned, but not too tight, and the respirator fits well across the nose bridge. Self-observation in a mirror to evaluate feet and respirator position is also a good idea. The person should do a user seal check, like I said before, by wearer through placing their hands over the respirator to cover as much of it as possible, then braces out to ensure no air leaks around the edge. If the person feels air leaking out from the edges of the respirator, or if glasses fog up, the fit is not snug. The user should adjust the respirator and perform the user seal check again until a good seal is achieved. Once these adjustments are made, you can proceed with the aerosol condensation nuclei counter to measure the particle concentration and calculate the fit factor. For the quantitative fit test, following OSHA protocol, the test subject will perform 4 exercises as part of the process. The test subject bends over several times for 50 seconds, touching their toes and inhaling 2 times at the bottom of the bend. This exercise tests how the respirator performs when the wearer moves and changes posture. The test subject talks loudly enough to be heard clearly by the test conductor for 30 seconds. This exercise is typically done by having the subject read the rainbow passage. This exercise tests how well the respirator stays in the place while the person speaks. The test subject turns their head from side to side for 30 seconds, inhaling 2 times at each extreme, both left and right. This exercise simulates how the respirator feeds during side-to-side motion, which can reveal leaks along the edge of the respirator. The test subject moves their head up and down for 39 seconds, inhaling 2 times at each extreme, both high and low. This exercise tests how the respirator feeds during vertical motion, simulating actions like looking up or down. At the end of the test, the overall feed factor is calculated by dividing the number of exercise, which is 4 in this case, by the sum of the reciprocals of the feed factor for each individual exercise. According to OSHA protocol, if the overall feed factor is 100 or greater, the test is passed for the respirator. If the overall feed factor is less than 100, the user fails the feed test. This method ensures that the respirator provides a proper seal and adequate protection during various movements. Here are the pros and cons of the quantitative feed test. Quantitative feed testing objectively evaluates respirators' feed by quantifying the amount of air leakage into the respirator without relying on the wearer's subjective response to the solution. The test provides a specific numerical value known as the feed factor, which represents the level of leakage around the respirator. However, a key drawback of these tests is higher cost compared to the qualitative feed test. It typically costs around 80 to 90 per person. Additionally, the aerosol condensation nuclei counter, which is commonly used for these tests, requires regular calibration and maintenance, which can add to the overall expense. Despite these costs, quantitative feed testing offers a more accurate and precise approach. It is completely data-driven and uses reliable physical metrics to assess the feed of a respirator, providing a more defensible evaluation of the respirator's performance. Now, let's dive into our study. We focus on evaluating the performance of general population in the N95 respirator feed test. The Minnesota State Fair proved to be an ideal location for recruiting participants as it provided access to diverse samples of the public. This approach is known as convenience sampling, where participants were selected based on their availability and accessibility. We set 2 inclusion criteria. Participants needed to be willing to join the study and sign informed consent form. For participants under the age of 18, their parents or guardians were required to sign the consent form on their behalf. To collect data, we first invited individuals to participate in our study and then explained the study objectives and eligibility criteria. Participants who met the inclusion criteria were asked to complete a demographic questionnaire on an iPad. The questionnaire includes 4 basic questions about gender, age, race, and facial hair. For facial hair, we ask male participants to specify the type of their facial hair, offering options such as clean-shaven, full beard, goatee, mustache, and stubble. No personally identifiable information was collected from the participant. We performed the quantitative feed test using a TSI Pro Plus Model 8038 condensation particle counter. The N95 respirator used in this study was 3M Aura respirator 9205 Plus. Feed testing was conducted according to OSHA standard protocol. Participants with a feed factor of 100 or greater passed the test, while those with a feed factor lower than 100 failed. In this study, we administrated only the talking exercise by reading the rainbow passage, as outlined in the OSHA protocol. This decision was based on previous studies showing that the talking exercise was more likely to detect poor respirator feed compared to other exercise. Additionally, we aim to provide an objective assessment of respirator feed within a short time frame that participants would tolerate. Since the State Fair is an event where people come to have fun, we wanted to minimize the time spent on the test to encourage more individuals to participate in our study. The demographic data shows that a total of 384 participants were enrolled in this study. The majority of the participants were female, with 63.8% of the sample. We had only 6 non-binary participants. There were 71 male participants with facial hair and 62 male participants without facial hair. In figure 1, we have points indicating the percentage of the feed test pass rate and lines showing the 95% confidence interval. Surprisingly, less than 50% of participants passed the feed test. To be exact, only 45.7%, which is quite low. The effect of facial hair on passing feed test is obvious. Of the 71 males with facial hair, only 11 passed the test. The pass rate for male without facial hair was somewhat better, but still not ideal, although significantly higher than for those with facial hair. Female had a much higher pass rate with about 50% passing the test, which was significantly better than both male groups. Only 2 non-binary participants passed the feed test. Approximately half of participants were older than 50 years old, providing a significant representation of older adults compared to other age groups. We observed significant nonlinear age-related differences in feed test results. The highest pass rate was found among participants aged 90 and younger, with about 56.7%, followed by a decline through middle age, a slight recovery in participants aged 50 to 59, and another decrease in older participants. We also found that the proportion of males with facial hair varied across age groups. To better understand the trend, we excluded males with facial hair. After excluding males with facial hair, the trend showed some changes. For instance, the difference between the past fit test rates of participants aged 90 and younger and those aged 40 to 49 was initially significant. But after excluding males with facial hair, the difference was no longer significant at the 0.05 significant level. The lowest pass rate was observed in participants aged 30 to 39. A key statistical takeaway from this is that treating age as a continuous variable would not have captured this trend. Thus, it is important to test age both categorically and continuously in studies to uncover potential nonlinear trends. The majority of participants were white, accounting for 80.2%, followed by 27 participants who were Asian. There were 60 Hispanic or Latino participants and 12 Black or African American participants. No significant differences were found in the feed test pass rate across race categories, whether or not males with facial hair were excluded. However, due to the small sample sizes in racial categories other than white, the results of the statistical test may not be reliable. We need more sample sizes in those groups to make a better conclusion. Among males with facial hair, the most common style were stubble with 38% and full beard 35.2%. We found interesting results regarding the impact of different types of facial hair on respiratory feed testing. Notably, none of the participants with full beard passed the feed test, resulting in a 0% pass rate. A full beard seemed to almost entirely compromise respiratory feed. Males with goatees had a slightly better outcome, but the pass rate was still low at just 9.1%. On the other hand, stubble had the least impact on the feed test result compared to other facial hair styles. However, it is important to note that the small sample sizes make it difficult to draw definitive conclusions like what we had for racial groups. The results from the logistic regression model reveal important insights into the factors affecting feed test performance. Females were 83% more likely to pass the feed test compared to male without facial hair, highlighting the significantly better performance of females in passing the test. The impact of facial hair on test performance is also evident. Males with facial hair were approximately 70% less likely to pass the feed test compared to males without facial hair, and this result is statistically significant. The confidence interval for non-binary participants was wide due to a small sample size, making the result for this group inconclusive. In terms of age, participants aged 30 to 39, 40 to 49, 60 to 69, and 70 plus were significantly less likely to pass the feed test than those under 90. These age group had between 54 and 63% lower odds of passing compared to participants under 90. Regarding race, no statistically significant differences were found in the odds of passing the feed test between non-white racial groups and white participants. Our study had several limitations, including we tested only one model of N95 respirator, which may limit our ability to generalize the findings to other respirator models. To reduce the time burden on participants, we use only one component of the full feed test protocol. Participants were recruited exclusively from attendees of the Minnesota State Fair, which may limit the ability to generalize the findings to other general population. I summarize the results of our study here. Females outperformed males without facial hair in passing the feed test for this type of N95 respirator. Younger participants showed better feed test results compared to middle age and older age. While no significant differences in feed test pass rate were observed among racial groups, a small sample size is critical. Certain racial categories may have limited our ability to detect potential disparity. Facial hair significantly compromised the feed test pass rate in male with facial hair compared to male without facial hair. Specifically, facial hairstyles such as full bird, which cover the facial zone more, resulted in significant decreases in feed factor. I'd like to take a moment to thank my amazing research team for their dedication and efforts on this project. Dr. Susan Arnold, Associate Professor in Division of Environmental Health Sciences, which is my supervisor as well. Dr. Lindsay Griffin, Associate Professor in College of Design. Dr. Ashley Peterson, Associate Professor in Division of Biostatistics and Health Data Sciences. Dr. William Dorfy, Adjunct Professor in Department of Mechanical Engineering, and Minji Yu, graduated PhD student in College of Design. Thank you for your time and attention. I hope you find the presentation informative and gain valuable insights into this topic. And I'm happy to answer any question you have.
Thank you so much for your research and presenting for us today. At this time, we do have some questions in the chat, but also to our audience, if there's anyone else who has questions, please do go ahead and navigate to that Q&A in the Zoom window and go ahead and enter your questions in the Q&A. We have about 10 minutes to get to as many questions as we can. So I will kick us off with our first one. Man-made and natural disasters can expose the public to respirable crystalline silica, asbestos, heavy metal dust exposures. How can we get governments, global organizations, and other stakeholders to promote the selection and use of respirators, and to a much lesser degree, dust masks to prevent public health exposures? Any thoughts or feedback? Lofty question.
Yeah, actually, it's really hard because even we have some problem for for convincing people in order to that. Okay, For example, asbestos and silica are really well known as a carcinogen, and these particles can induce carcinogen not only in workers but also in general population. So I think that getting more data and collecting some data and representing them in a well-structured manner can help us a lot. And and even I think epidemiological studies and that shows that the effect of long-term exposure for people, I think can help us. But to be honest, it's not a easy solution here.
Thank you. This question kind of builds on that idea of public exposures. So you categorize the groups and subgroups as either pass or fail, and this person is curious whether, if we look at fit test scores, there would be some trends, and if many of the fails were close to passing, so therefore perhaps maybe they got some protection, and kind of, so on that thread, when people were close to passing or but failed ultimately, do they get some protection? And what implications might that have when we think about more of a general audience, general public exposures?
Yes, you're right. One question that came up to my mind for at first when we did our research. Okay, one person got a feed factor 99. Does that mean they failed this test? But for example, one person that got 101, how about this person? So we brought these things in our paper that we are going to publish in the near future. So I think it's good reference to take a look at it. I didn't want to make my presentation more longer, so it's a reason that I decided to just exclude that table from my presentation.
Thank you so much. Yes, so be on the lookout for that pending publication, and there'll be some more information as well in there.
Yeah.
Awesome. Another question. Can you talk about performing the positive and negative leak checks to ensure the wearer has a good face fit each time the respirator is worn?
Well, actually, it's two different quantitative feed tests, protocol that, if you just Google OSHA protocol for feed testing, you can get a lot of information on that, and I think, it's kind of more structured, protocol for OSHA that you can just easily reach out to it and read and get a lot of information on that different type of quantitative feed test.
Thank you. Another question came in. Do you know of any studies that identify the necessary performance for physical fitness to use N95 respirators, for example, lungs and cardiologic tests, as they do for partial or full face respirators?
Well, based on my knowledge, the main method for feed testing are this qualitative and quantitative. And personally, I don't know about this type of test for fitness. So maybe we have something out there. To be honest, I don't know about that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and if anyone on the call is aware of that, you're also welcome to enter any information you might have. I don't know if we're joined by any occupational medicine physicians here,
Yeah.
but please feel free if anyone does know a resource to put it in the chat. Another question, did your study include looking at face shape and how that might impact respirator fit?
Well, actually, our study had two parts. Another part that I didn't talk about that today was, is doing a face scanning using a camera that gave us a 3D, image of participant's face. I didn't talk about that part today because, as I said, I just focus on this part. And we didn't analyze that data yet, but I think it's good to do that now and publish a paper that shows different face measurement and the effect of different face measurements on feed testing.
Great, thank you so much. Can you also expand on the type of training and coaching that before and during the fit testing that the participants received?
Yeah, actually, our team explained all the steps that we are going to take during our collecting data. So I remember even some people just declined to continue the test for facial scanning, and we tried to show them how the test is going to perform, and providing some pictures that showed them, okay, we need you to wear the N95 respirator like this, and we are going to measure particle concentration inside and outside the respirator. And we were a team, so it was kind of a long process to doing the test, and we tried to explain everything to the participants.
Thank you so much. And we do have a comment someone shared regarding the previous question about pre-qualifications for physical conditions, that a respirator wearers must be pre-qualified to wear respirators if they have a number of physical, like pulmonary or cardiovascular issues, emotional dysfunctions. They may be precluded from wearing a respirator. So it's one of our audience members. Thanks for adding that as well. Another question, what was the age range for those who are less than 19 who participated in the study? Since N95s are typically not designed for children, it was interesting to see that those less than 19 had high fit test pass rates.
Yeah, it was one of our surprising results because, as you said, it's really because respirators are usually not designed for very young people. So, but we found that it's quite different because these masks are more fit with younger than even older adults. So I think different I think changes in anthropometric measurements can be something that we need to redesign our respirator, because these respirators are not well fit with older people anymore, and because I think the respirator are designed based on anthropometric results for 2005. So anthropometric measurements are changed a lot. So I think one good thing is to redesign our respirator, and those old designs are good for youngers, but it's not suitable for older adults anymore.
Thank you so much. Another question, the banana oil vapor in qualitative fit testing can migrate out from the test hood, and the airborne vapor can migrate from the test room to the nearby waiting room. How can we prevent participants from being exposed and prevent a false positive test outcome?
Well, as I said, qualitative fit test has a lot of issues. It relies on wearer's perception of the solution. And the main measure that we can do here is using, a ventilated room for taking the fit test, and, preventing from, the solution to release into the room, and, compromise the results of the test.
Thank you so much. And are liquid droplets and dust both considered particles in terms of respirator efficiency?
Yeah. It's both of them are called particulates, so it's kind of the same term for the same thing. I can say.
Thank you so much. We're reaching just about the end of our presentation here, but I'd just love to ask, is there anything in terms of next steps for your research that you're going to be looking into, or where do you think that this research is headed?
Well, actually, another asset that we took for this research is, as I said, we have a small sample sizes for some races, for some some type of facial hair. So we decided to use Bayesian analysis in order to use previous studies, and putting together with our with our data. And because, as I said, frequentist analysis is not suitable for small sample sizes, and it's kind of, the result is not conclusive. So it's another step that we already took, and I'm working on the paper to, report the final results.
Amazing. Well, thank you again so much for your presentation. We really appreciate you sharing your research with all of us. To our audience, this has been recorded. We'll be making this available on our YouTube channel within 5 business days, and keep your eye out for a post-course evaluation email. You'll get that directly via Zoom 24 hours after the session today. And be sure to check out our website for more information and other upcoming webinars, coeh@berkeley.edu/about-CE. And thank you again for the wonderful questions and participation today. We really appreciate it. I hope you all have a wonderful holiday season.
Thank you.